Moments that she needed it, it was a black box. And it wasn't just how do you plan a funeral with a baby in the hospital? You ask the benefits guy, he'll say 150 to 200. The answer is over 600. And the access is the problem.
We don't have a resource problem. We have a distribution problem.
And there's a reason why Amazon is not a chatbot. Retail has been solving this problem for 20 years.
Healthcare, we are 10, 15 years behind every other industry.
We have to save our clients hard dollar money. And that's how I win the right to do our mission.
Welcome to the podcast, Healthcare Without Blind Spots. It is a joy to be with Ashley Reid, founder and CEO of Wellist. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me, Trevor.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Before we get into work and Wellist, maybe just a personal intro. And what I'd love for you to do is, what's your B-side intro? You know, not the big corporate intro, but the intro that not everybody knows, that your dedicated listeners and fans, the ones that they appreciate.
Yeah. My happy place is in Northern Ontario. And
I love that.
I spend the summers with 7 nieces and nephews bunked up, jumping on a lily pad in the lake.
Nice.
So behind me, you'll always see some background Canadian thing. And right now I'm actually taking advantage of the change in laws and spending a lot of time running down documents to get my Canadian citizenship.
I love that.
Me Canadian.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Thank you. And second question before we get into work and the amazing things that you all do. You know, and you and I've talked about this, I spend a lot of time thinking about joy. And you gave me a little bit of that just now and with Canada. But what are the things that bring you joy, and what are the things that take joy away?
Oh, those are two different questions.
Yeah.
The answer is what I know now is that
Yeah.
both of those are just a choice, right? It's like what giveth and what taketh away. Actually, less about the external trigger. It's so much more about like, are you slept? Have you slept? You know, because sometimes when things are hard, that's when like the most joyful, playful, funny things happen when you're like really in the grind of hard things.
Yeah.
Um, and it just where I have really come to appreciate is the difference between me being joyful or not is literally like how resourced am I?
Yeah.
If I feel resourced, like it's joyful. Doesn't matter what the situation is.
Yeah.
And as you know, when I am not resourced, I'm not joyful. And so that's a discipline. And so I don't think I knew that maybe even 10 years ago when I started. I
Yeah.
think I thought like, I mean, you probably heard me because we've been friends for a long time at this point. Like in
Yeah.
6 months, it will be better. Or after this thing happens, it will be easier. And the reality is, none of that is true. If you commit your life to doing hard things, it's
Yeah.
always going to be hard, but it can also be equally joyful. And so, the number one thing I've learned is candidly self-regulation over the last 10 years is the driver between me being joyful or not.
I love that. I think about it too, and when I have conversations a lot with people as they are either going through a life change or going through a career change and asking that question. And I think what you just said like resonates so much because it's more about getting comfortable with yourself and asking those questions, right? And understanding you. It doesn't matter anybody else and anything else, right? It's understanding for you what are those things and trying to be as disciplined and thoughtful as you can be about going after that. And just recognizing again what gives you energy and joy and what are the things that take it away. And in the simplest way, stop doing the stuff if you can that takes it away and do more of the things that bring it to you. Just that's simple.
Yeah, that's really true.
Okay. When transitioning to just to think about the amazing work that you do, if
Right.
you had to summarize Wellist and the why for you, what what's the problem that you're trying to fix?
Yeah. Well, the origin of Wellist is my best friend's father died of cancer, and she went into preterm labor within 24
Yeah,
hours of her dad dying. And
it's crazy.
he had a lot of agency, right? He
Yeah,
interviewed
yeah,
with resources. We were in Boston. He was at Man's Greatest Hospital that offers so much support. And, there's so much here in Boston in our communities. But in the moments that she needed it, it was a black box. And it
yeah,
wasn't just how do you plan a funeral with a baby in the hospital, but like, how does dinner get on the table? How does the toddler get to school? Like, am I
yeah,
depressed? Like, all of these things were hard. And I was like, there's this thing called the internet. It shouldn't be so difficult. And so that really started a now over decades long journey of how do we connect people to the resources that are available to them in the moments that matter. And so we talk about our mission at Wellist is building the support network that we want for our own loved ones. It's a deeply personal exercise, I think, for everyone at the company because life is given that at some point someone you love is going to have a really hard challenge. It doesn't even have to
yeah,
be critical. And my wish is that when your mom or your colleague or your child needs support, that anyone at my company can be like, I've built a different experience that will matter to them personally, and that the output of their work will be generative to providing a support network for the people that they actually love and support. And so that's what we're working to do at Wellness.
how's it going?
As you know, my son it. There are as an early stage founder, well, there are 20 doors, and I've been through 18 of them that didn't work out, and so
Yep.
19 and 20 are just better. Like,
Yeah.
so as it's going so much more promising. It's the work quality is so much better. We are launching a creative campaign for a new client, and I,
Yeah,
like, looked at it, and I was like, "This is so good." Like,
yeah,
I was so proud, and then I looked at it and I was like, "Oh, this is decades worth of work." Ann Toomey, who hasn't worked at Wellist in years, did this foundation, and then you
yeah,
can almost see, like, 8 the output of doors 1 through 18, and
yeah.
every one made it just a little bit better to now, 10 years later, it is excellent, and I was so proud of the resilience and the
Yeah,
effort and the iterations that got us to a point where, like, now it's pretty fantastic.
I love that. Yeah, and it feels impossible to, like, predict the journey and to expect it to be this straight line, right? It's such an impossibility. And the earlier that you let that go and recognize that that's it, right? And that you have to open 18 doors to find the 19th and 20th that work,
Yeah.
is the to me, that's the most common thing with every entrepreneur and founder and leader that I talk to. And the ones that are successful and navigate and have the staying power is that they know that, right? And that no is okay, and it's waiting, it's finding the next yes, right, as part of that.
Right. Yeah.
As you were talking about the resources and again, when people are in need, I believe in this country especially, we don't have a wealth problem, we don't have a food problem, we don't have a resource problem. We have a distribution problem. Like, we have plenty of everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and what struck me when you were talking about the why for you all, the resources are there. It's the important connections that you enable people to make. Is that right? Is that how you think about it?
100%, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
a good example of this is we're launching a client right now, and that there is a perception that there aren't a lot of resources or investments in support.
Yeah.
Um, they have 17 vendors. Just outside of the man-made, like, career development, there's a food
Yeah.
pantry at the hospital, that there are 17 partners that provide services, everything from the EAP to the health plan.
Okay.
How many resources do you think are buried in 17 vendors?
Hundreds? I don't know.
So if you ask the broker, say
Yeah.
50, you ask the benefits guy, he'll say 150 to 200. The answer is over 600.
Jeez.
And this is getting worse because now there's so much industry consolidation, right?
Yeah.
So even used to do one thing, but now they do 18 things. And so they just came out with their annual study that said in the family support area, we're adding about 30% more support, and employees are feeling like they're getting 10% less. And so not only do I feel that way, the data supports what you say, which is the resources are there and the access is the problem. And that this isn't just a problem for the individual, right?
Right. Right.
It's also a problem for organizations because we spend so much money, and it leads to 2
Yeah.
layers of financial waste. One is we spend money on things that are redundant or people don't really want, but we don't know it. And then the other thing is we spend money on things that are amazing resources, but because not enough people use them, our healthcare costs are still too high or our attrition rates are still too high. And so I have really come to believe that that access problem is 80 to 90% of the issue.
I get yeah. Again, that resonates so much. So, as you think about that, is that a combination of employers trying to do the best job that they can and making benefits available? Is it that they aren't sure actually what employees need, or is it they actually have everything and maybe way more than what employees need? It's the connection points that are broken.
Yeah, a lot of it's probably a little bit of both, right?
Okay.
But
Yeah.
on an example here is we had a client who had an employee who needed fertility support,
Okay.
and they didn't have the resources to be able to elect a, you know, Cadillac fertility
Sure.
out.
Sure. Sure.
And normally, what would happen is the employee would have gone to HR and said, like, "Is there fertility support?" And it would said no, and that's where it would have ended. But
Yeah.
the reality is this client had invested in an EAP that had a partner, that had another partner, that had a relationship with Wind Fertility.
Okay.
The EAP had no idea there was a fertility benefit resource. The HR person had no idea there was a fertility resource. And so I would actually say there's risk in AI because we know if we buy, well, you need fertility, here's the fertility app, right? And we
Yeah.
also I won't preview my soapbox, but as you know, we
It's okay.
assume that
Uh,
we know what people want. It is so paternalistic. And
Yes.
you're pregnant, here's the pregnant things. Or not to mention that like if you and I are pregnant, like I have no financial resources, you uh have aging parents, right? We actually only have a 20 to 30% of our needs that are the same and relative to our uh
Yeah.
pregnancy, and then, oh, by the way, how I need to solve for childcare is backup childcare at the Y, and you want nanny share programs in Newton, Massachusetts, or whatever it is, right? And
Right.
so we have my frustration with how most organizations have gone after solving this access problem is they have done it with a really big brother hand. Like I understand because you have
Yeah.
this demographic or this clinical driver.
Sure.
This is what you need, and I'm actually gonna hold your hand all the way through the process, and we have no agency, and we have no consumer choice in that process, and we wonder why, like, only 30% of the people actually get connected to support.
Right. Oh, it's so um telling, and it is so consistent, right? The doing things to and for people, right? Not with people. And um how like talk to me then about like how do you give people agency and allow so like, on two sides of this,
Yeah.
both enabling that parent, that child, that spouse in terms of, like, how do you give them the ability to do that? And how do you convince the employer or other, like, that that's in their best interest too, like,
Yeah.
to be able to do that?
Yeah. Uh, our answer is always you just ask
Yeah.
and you use technology to do that. So instead of in an age where everyone is basically saying, we can throw PDFs into an AI and get some segments around life events and claims data. And then if you're diabetic, we'll push this is the things that you're either doing it through a comms platform or a personified chat.
Yep.
And honestly, the bar is so low that those technologies will get a 10 to 20% lift.
Sure.
And 20% more in your MSK program or your cancer guard, like that's real money. Like,
Right.
but you're still not addressing 2/3 of every person's needs and you're leaving 2/3 of the people behind. And so what Wellist does is we just through an omni-channel experience again, retail has been solving this problem for 20 years, and there's a reason why Amazon
Mhm.
is not a chatbot. If you're optimizing for share of wallet and transaction value, the principles of e-commerce are the same, right? We have, um a visual display that allows us to compare resources. We give them guidance on what we're looking for. It allows us to filter and really refine recommendations so we get
Yeah.
exactly what we needed. And
Yeah.
so we didn't recreate the model. We just built it for a different use case. And the net impact is employees come for one or two things. But when they're there, they're like, oh, think about when you're shopping on Amazon. They're like, oh, I didn't think
Yeah.
about it. But
Right.
yes, I
Yeah.
do need that. People come for one or two things. They leave connecting with 6 to 17 resources. The average number is 11. And so, actually, if you want to bend the curve with things like mental health or diabetes, the
Yeah.
key is get them earlier.
Yeah.
So, if you enable an experience like Wellist, where we start with an unbiased, what would be most helpful to you today, and then give you tools to
Mm.
say career development for me is coaching or it's tuition reimbursement,
Right.
or
Yeah.
then people find what they need, and then so on the employee side, you're demonstrating I can actually get your employees more support, but then downstream, you need a head fake here. Like, and the answer is I need to then be able to take that and create a data set for employers that say, you're spending money on things that people
Right.
don't need,
Yeah.
or you're spending money on things that are redundant because you actually take childcare. You're paying for a childcare benefit that only 3% of your employees want, but Delta Dental has childcare discounts. Uh, Spring Health provides resources. Health Advocate
Right.
has an amazing childcare locator. And in fact, when your employees evaluate these equitably, they prefer things on this side. So you don't have to pay for this. You're getting your employees more support with things they actually want and need, and you don't have to
Yeah.
spend money here. And so at the end of the day, for Wellist, we have to save our clients hard dollar money. And
Yeah.
that's how I win the right to do our mission, which is to help employees get the support they need.
And because in healthcare we are 10, 15 years behind every other industry, you get to take things that you know work, right? It's like Amazon and other, right? And apply them to healthcare, which is an amazing thing. So many of the things you just talked about and, my world and social risk and social determinants, right? What you just described, right, that people need is so much more than access to the primary care or the specialist network, as part of that. When I guess when did you link the relationship between social risk and health and employer health, employee health, right, as part of that? Like, yeah.
I was very, very privileged. So I did Bain and Bridgespan, and then, um, the woman who changed my career, Christina Isakovich, was the chief strategy and marketing officer at Philips Healthcare, and she's like,
Yeah,
You wanna do smart, hard problem work, and you wanna do it in a mission-driven environment? Like, come look at this healthcare thing. Like,
right.
you'll spend your whole career trying to solve this,
Yeah,
um, but
yeah,
it won't matter, right? It's the
yeah,
largest economic problem, it's the most personal problem, it's the hardest science problems, like, it is it requires all of us to throw our body to try and make a dent to make it better, and, um, I was in my last job at Philips, I was running strategy for the $3 billion continuum of care business at
Yeah.
Philips. My day job was looking at home care assets like, Help I Fawn and I Can't Get Out,
Yep.
Respironics, keeping her
Yep.
respiratory, and Rebecca Oni was doing her work in the at, Boston Medical Center,
Yep. Yep.
and as you for those people who don't know, she, like, took college students and said, "We can't discharge somebody with insulin if they can't refrigerate it," and so sh like, we have to just start the work on the last mile access problem, right? That are the difference between this person being able to manage their diabetes sustainably or they're gonna be back in the ED in a week. And I have to say, like, she won a MacArthur for that, but that's some of the best
Yeah.
work that's ever been done, right? And so we
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
everybody's like, SDOH is a word because of the studies that she did when she was at Harvard. And it was the first time where I was really, convinced that, uh we need more holistic support. And then, as you know, Wellist started our business selling to large health systems as an
Yeah.
extension of care. We now spend most of our time um, focused on selling to employers. But when I was first starting, I went to major hospitals and was like, what is the reason why your patients are non-compliant? This was specifically in cancer care. And their
Yeah.
answer was rotation. And I was like, that makes no sense. That can't be true." And so then I went to a top 10 cancer center and was like, "If I needed a ride, what
Yeah.
how would you help me?" They sent me to a hallway where somebody had so thoughtfully assembled a flip chart folders of resources, and you would open them, and
Yep.
so for an hour, I took paper of anything that had to do with transportation. I made calls for 4 hours, and at the end of that, I was like, the best I had was American Cancer Society said, "We'll put you on a list and let you know if we can get a volunteer." And I was like, "Okay, I'm convinced." You know me, like, if I have to go to
Oh,
the level of granularity of, like, what's the core issue here, and then I was like, "This is unbearable. No way." And
yeah.
so that's how we started.
I love that. And I think I talk a bunch about just how egocentric we are in healthcare and I say this as a former practicing physician, right?
Ye
Like we understand now so well, and there's such great evidence around treatment plans for disease and condition and episodes of care. And then what we expect is when we get the privilege of seeing a person as a patient, as part of that if we make the diagnosis and we put them on a treatment plan that's evidence based, that everything's going to be like it'll work. And I'm sure you've seen only 20% of outcomes are impacted by the clinical disease and 80%. And I was at a presentation I was getting ready for a health plan to present to their value-based care providers. And the executive for the program, he said, "Trenner, are you really going to go tell a bunch of physicians that their life's work only amounts to 20%?" I'm like "No, actually, I'm not." I'm like, You've missed the point. The 20% is the most important thing. Like, if we don't get people in and get them diagnosed, if we don't get them treated, if they can't afford their medications, if we don't get them to the specialists, then we failed." What I'm saying is 80% of the time that people can't follow that really thoughtful evidence-based plan that you have, it's social risk. It's the barriers in their life. I don't have childcare for my family. I don't have a ride, right? My car broke down. I can't afford the pay, and to be blind, to have a blind spot
Yeah.
for like like feels like the definition of insanity. We're going to keep trying to do the same thing, expecting different results, and all of those people suffer, right, as part of that.
Yeah, it's so funny. When you're like, "No, I'm not gonna say that." I was like, yes, you are gonna say that." But the reason why I say that is because I've spent so many years now on the floor with healthcare practitioners, we're
Yeah,
gonna put it like,
broadly. Yep.
I think, I mean, and you go back to the heroics during COVID, like, they wanna do
Yeah,
the right thing. And so
100%.
our responsibility is to your point, give them tools and data to expand their personal sphere of influence. And so when we know better, we do better. And I think it is an obligation for us to empower those people who are working and grinding day in, day out with the best we know so that they can have much impact as possible. It is not it when delivered right, that data expands their influence. It does not minimize it. And so I totally think you're on the right track there.
And sticking on that theme for a second, because I get asked a lot, like, whose responsibility is it to
Mm.
address social risk, right? And the barriers and these challenges as part of that. You said a little this before, and maybe to tee you up more around that. Um, God, it's got to be everybody's. Like, it's too damn hard if we put it on one group. Um, so two things maybe. Just I love your perspective. Like, a how do we make this a team sport? And B, what is the role of the employer, right? Who gets more engagement and touch points with somebody who has commercial insurance, who is employed?
Yeah.
The employer gets thousands of more engagement opportunities than the provider and certainly the health plan, the health insurance company. So, like, how does like
Mm.
how do employers like, sort of deal with that and what their responsibility is in that if it is a team sport, what their role is on that team?
Yeah. So I've said I've been through 18 doors that were wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the most meaningful learnings for me that happened when, we couldn't be on the floor during COVID. So our
Yeah.
patient business got decimated. And the nurses started breaking into my product for support for themselves, with things like childcare
Oh,
and mental health. And we're like, why
yeah.
is this happening? Hospitals provide millions of dollars of employee benefits. It goes back to that access problem we talked about.
Yeah.
And so what a very unlucky horror, or what a very lucky horror that we had to manage through. Because when I sold to hospitals, your word of "It's everyone's problem," but it was everybody and no one's problem, is
Yep.
maybe we use that, and I'm a
Yeah.
consultant, so I was like, "We save nurses 2 to 5 hours a week. We drive direct revenue for the hospital. We increase HCAHPS scores. Everyone's gonna love us." The problem is that that confers to 3 different C-level executives, and hospitals are designed culturally to make decisions by committee. And so I would have 45 people in a buying decision and 45 people in an implementation. And what happened when we figured out that, like, oh, employees are the same people who show up in a hospital, like you on the other side, um, I was that what is an CHRO responsible for? They're
Yeah.
responsible for people and making sure that they're resourced to practice at the top of their license, right? And then also they're responsible for cost. And then if they're
Yeah.
spending
Yep.
about
Yeah.
30% of compensation spend on employee resources that 3 out of 4 employees don't use.
Right.
And so what I learned is I can go to a CHRO and say, "I want to get your employees 5 times more support and I want to help you cut your costs." That is something she is already responsible for. It's
Right.
not a thing that I'm adding to her core
Yep.
responsibilities.
Right.
I am a path to her core agenda, and she doesn't have to ask the head of marketing or the head of engineering, like,
Yeah.
"Can I execute against this?" And so that was a really meaningful unlock, which I did not understand, which is when we build businesses, find a C-level executive, understand what are their top 3 priorities, and understand where the budget is that funds it. The
Yeah.
problem with social determinants is there is today in health systems not a C-level executive
Yeah.
that owns that, and they don't have a budget. And so the net impact is it's gonna be the first thing that falls through on everything. Ironically, if you think about your own well-being, like, your performance at work, your
Yeah.
performance managing your care, like, there are things that have nothing to do with the actual work or the
Yeah.
actual mission, but impact how you lead your company.
Yeah.
Like, how patient are with your team? Do you do an extra hour of work tonight? Do you get on the Peloton, or are you too tired and you sit on your couch and have a glass of wine? Not that I'm speaking personally or anything, right?
Nothing. No.
And
Yeah.
so, if that's the truth for me,
Right.
that's for everyone. And
Yep.
as employers, we only have one job. It is to get incremental productivity.
But the
The only way we get incremental productivity is by taking care of our employees. And so finding the person who cares about that is the most critical unlock. And the other thing I would say is what I've learned is, we started in healthcare, but we now support all different industries: home care, healthcare,
Sure.
and
Right.
consulting. What I've learned is people who, or industries that really understand their people are their product, right?
Yeah.
And that they make decisions in their industry faster means that you're gonna win opportunities to help their teams faster. So, even when I sell an employer program to tech versus hospitals, like, I still have 10 people in a hospital discussion where I might have 1 or 2 with a tech,
Right.
organization. And so that's the other piece. If we wanna get things to scale, we need to think beyond healthcare. We need to actually think around who are the early adopters in general in the
Right.
world, go partner with them to get momentum.
There's so many good things in there. The one as we maybe close out, but with a work question before I ask you another personal question. The alignment, and I think about this, you talked about social determinants not having a C-suite sponsor. Like, I don't think of us actually as a health equity company. I really barely think of us as a like SDOH company. I think of us as a risk insight company. And when you're managing a person and a population, you want to know as much as you possibly can. And if
Yeah.
we don't connect that to hard dollar ROI, right? Then we aren't sustainable. Like in the work that we do, and it is as simple, right, as I believe that if you look at clinical conditions, episodes of care, where people have that have, again, a similar clinical story, when you start to look at social risk, that's where you start to see variation in utilization and cost and experience and all of those things. So that's the unlock, right, as part of that. And so for
Yeah.
ROI, you were just talking, I would just love maybe your last thoughts on ROI and the measurement, because you started to talk about it. It to me, for employers, it's so much more than healthcare cost. I think their premiums keep coming up and everything, and that you talked about, like, waste, and just maybe, like, absenteeism and presenteeism and productivity and churn, and where the benefits that they have available that their employees aren't acting today that you can help connect. Like, how are they measuring maybe the non-traditional healthcare cost benefit that come from all the work that you're doing?
Yeah. For us, it has to be like CFO certified, which means it
Okay.
literally,
Yeah.
like, I am literally no longer paying for X, right? And
Yeah.
so
Okay. Yeah.
there are 3 ways that we really look at this. The first is you're paying for things that are redundant or people don't want, but you don't have the data to know what that is. And our platform generates the data based on what people
Yeah.
select, how they consume, what they filter on, what they engage with, what they abandon. And so we can say, a good example is that we had a client that was like, 80% women. They thought 40% of their employees needed childcare, and um, the survey said cost was the driver. Well, when we looked at the data, not 40% wanted childcare, only 13% were looking for childcare. It was in the bottom 20% of things they actually needed. It wasn't cost. Only 4% were looking for discounts and financial assistance. It was overwhelmingly convenience. They're looking for
Yep.
after care and backup care. So they bought a vendor that only had 3% utilization. Like, why is this happening? The addressable market was done, the behavioral test. And so then we were like, well, let's see what they actually looked at when they had full potential. So 3% want this vendor, but people were engaging again with like the Spring Health resources, the Delta Dental resources, the health.
Yeah.
When you give substitutes and people can say, "Oh, I can cover this without paying for something," you can literally just cut programs. So that's the first. The second is for every employer, as you described, they buy vendors, whether it's a surgical carve out or diabetes program.
Yeah.
They are convinced if more people get in, it will reduce their costs. And so we measure exactly this was your 12-month baseline before Wellist. Wellist went live. We had a client that went live in the end of um, February. They had a 12x increase in one of their vendors in the first month, right? And so we can prove exactly who and how many came
Right.
through the list. And so I can
It's
attribute
amazing.
my contribution to that. And then the third is we give them data to make these decisions not once a year or not a conjoint study, like in real time. So they don't have to pay for a huge market study that like is already out of date as soon as they get it. So those are the hard dollars. But then we also look at like that's not the full story. It's how much time do you save the HR team? It's
Yeah.
have you reduced the overall pharmacy spend? Have you uh, really moved the needle on the employee value proposition surveys. And so you have to for to sell and sell quickly, you have to be able to say, I will guarantee the hard dollars savings and we'll put fees at risk. But then for when you think about what's the total impact to your business, you really have to think about it across all the drivers.
This is amazing. You are a badass.
Mm.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you for being a friend. Thank
Mm.
you for opening the 19th door and keeping to charge through. So deeply appreciate you being here today.
I really appreciate you. I think the
All right.
lesson that I learned from you was um I mean, when we first met, it was really early, and I was nervous because you were like a big entrepreneur who had exited, and I was so intimidated. And so when people think about like partnering in these spaces, it's usually so competitive. And you have been like the bright spot and like held me up on this journey. And so I think if I could go back, however, 12 years and be like, the people who you care about the problems you solve, even if you feel like they're competitive, are the people who are closest to being your friends and advocates.
Yeah.
And if I could like help entrepreneurs do one thing, it's like build friends with the people who are
Yeah.
in your peer group. So thank you,
I love
Connor.
that. Thank you, Ashley. All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay, bye.